Hey, what you doing? This is Jerry Logan. Again, Sociology 1120, Sex, Gender, and Power. Chapter 6. I want to talk about Chapter 6 today. So, Chapter 6 deals with gender and families. And families, of course, one of the biggest social institutions in the world, not just the United States, but in the world. And one thing about these social institutions is that it kind of helps govern how we live. And so remember, when we look at families, and we already talked a lot about gender from the previous chapters, and I'll just kind of focus on the families. Also, in my intro to sociology class, I also teach a chapter on marriage and families, in which I get more into detail. So feel free to go to my YouTube channel, Jerry Logan Professor. Look up the chapter in the intro to sociology class. I have a whole lecture on families. And as I continue to go on, I'm always trying to update my chapters with more information and stuff like that. So let's get started with this one. Of course, I don't want to be long-winded. Of course, like I say, students look up and say, oh, I have an hour video. That's too long. So therefore, some students like, okay, let me try to fast forward it. So I try to minimize it as much as I can to help give you a better feeling of just this chapter in a lecturing point of view, not just by looking at PowerPoint slides. So again, it's been recognized the family is one of the social institutions, but also it is one of the most rapidly changing social institutions. And again, we look at the historical piece of the patterns of the family way back then to hunter and gathering societies through the early 18th, 19th century parts. We're also looking at families from 50 years ago, 20 years ago, currently, and what families will be looking like in the future. So much of that change is the result of the change in gender relationship changes that have dramatically altered the patterns of contemporary family life. So remember, we talked about gender socialization, how we have been socialized into our gender roles, not just by the society standards, but also through your family, because again, there is a culture inside of your family that decides on what type of gender roles to play. And then we look at the gender relationships. A lot of us sometimes look at, okay, how I was raised up. This is what my father did, this is what my mother did, my grandmother, my grandfather, male, female, whatever parts of the extended family. However, there's sometimes the gender roles consents in which we continue to go on to Nancy Child role, sex role theories, and stuff like that. We get into how people are supposed to behave. And when we get into relationships, sometimes we say, hey, well, this is what a man's supposed to do. This is what a woman's supposed to do. And I know for old school, I'm 50, so, but for some families, it may be changing for younger people and in generations to come. So these changes have brought about new freedoms to women, along with changes in men's families' roles. So traditionally, remember the traditional roles. Let's go back to the 1900s, early 1900s. The role of the women is to cook, clean, the so-called role. Women stay at home, men go out at work, but now there's a dual role of both parties who can be working. Or it could be the man staying at home, or the woman can still choose to be at home. So there are different structures of the family, but it also applies to the individual family in itself. So when we look at some of the changes of this so-called new freedoms for women, I think also is the support for the men in the role that they play in the family. Not just traditionally men sit at home, put their feet up, watching the game, woman walking around doing the cooking, bringing them food, preparing. And there's a new generation of men who like to cook, like myself. I love to cook, so I cook a lot. Summertime, I'm out here barbecuing, so I'm just having fun. So I love to cook. So there's a lot of changes in relationships where I see that even friends that I've known where the men do all the cooking. So we have family gatherings. It's always the men who's always barbecuing. And we're feeding, we're putting plates together, we're feeding the women. Or I'll go to a friend's house, some of the guys are cooking and the ladies are not cooking. And not just saying that the women choose not to cook or can't cook. Well, some men have stepped up that role in the cooking. Also being able to take care of the kids. It's a two-party thing. If, it's not just the woman's responsibility, it's the man's responsibility. So, and remember, fellas, if you ever watching your kids, do not say I'm babysitting. You don't babysit your own kids. Hey, what you doing, man? I'm just chilling, man. Oh yeah, what else, man? I'm just babysitting. Babysitting who? My kids. You don't babysit your kids. These are your kids. You're never babysitting your kids, okay? Fellas, remember that. At the same time, however, the changes in women's and men's lives have brought about new demands for the family, not the least of which is balance and demand of family life and work. Families are still to believe the moral compass of society, of course, and when families fail to meet the so-called social ideal, the individual family members often take the blame, and unfortunately, mothers and women are especially prone to these accusations. So, when I look at this big thing of families and how we balance in the work life and family life, again, it's both parties. Being a father, having a daughter, having a child, it's like I have a responsibility to be a parent to her and to be responsible for her in this society. And so whenever there's a fail in the family, traditionally there have been cases where they would look at the woman or the mother and blame her. Well, it's the mother's fault, it's the woman's fault. No, it's two parties involved. Even if you're not in a relationship together, both parents, you still can co-parent successfully. But neither should blame the woman and say it's her fault that this happened to this child or this child was like this, or how did his mother raise him. Both parties are responsible as parenting and co-parenting successfully. Many of the so-called strains associated with family life stem from the conflict posed by the family's relationship to the other social institutions. So, and this is huge also. When you put a strain on a conflict on a relationship, it may not be the individuals themselves, it may be the outside forces, the social institutions and other things that's going on in society which can put a strain and cause conflict in a relationship. Unemployment, they can do major damage to relationships. Someone can lose their job. The other person can put blame on that person. Why you lose your job? And well, baby, why you not working? You should be doing this. We need your income. And both parties cannot be working, which puts a financial strain and get to arguing amongst each other's bill, what bills we gonna pay, or you shouldn't have created that bill. I told you you shouldn't have got that car note. Now how we gonna pay for it? Told you we couldn't afford this house. I told you we couldn't do this. And then began to blame each other. Divorce, unfortunately, divorce can be nuts and never the case. Violence should never be a case, in my opinion. But these are the things they experience within the family, although they are part of the broader social conditions. So the broader social conditions can put strain. And even now, you can look at it with people being unemployed, and even not in a relationship. It brings strain to anybody. Problems with school, it's a lot going on, but try not to put the association and put conflict with other individuals that you're involved with. The family is also blamed for large social problems. If individuals within the family could tackle problems on their own, even when are deeply rooted in society, and that's what I'm talking about, is when you are deeply rooted in society and you are part of the organizations in church, you're part of the social organizations in the community, and you have work to do, and they're taking care of kids. It's a lot of responsibilities, but the social problems itself is on a broader level, not just the family. Families are when we first encounter social expectations. Remember, we talk about socialization of gender roles. One of the first persons you meet is your family. Where our physical needs are met, where our primary emotional bonds are first established, and where we first encounter a system of authority, power, and social conflict. So when a child is born, the first person that child really meets is the family. The child begins to develop a relationship with the parents, and through the socialization, the child learns to be a member of the family, learn the culture of the family. Again, understanding the authority and power, the parent which exercises that, and the child has to be also socialized to be a member of society, the social expectations. Historian Philip Ayres locates the origin of the family. So from a historical point of view, the Western family is a series of gradual transformations that began in the 14th century and culminated in the 17th and 18th centuries. So this is going to be exam questions. So when you start getting a historical piece, you say, okay, I know he's going to ask me this on the exam. So as you listen to this and you review my PowerPoints, this is going to be on the exam. He got to pick something from the chapter. Professor Logan got to pick something from the chapter. What is going to be the top things he's going to pick for an exam? This is definitely one of them, so make sure you're familiar with this. So starting in the 14th century, the wife's position in the household deteriorated as she lost the right to replace her husband in the management of household affairs in the event of his death, incapacitation, or insanity. We're going back to the 14th century. By the 16th century, a wife was placed totally under the authority of a husband. Any acts he performed without the authority of a husband or the law was considered null and void. I know some of y'all saying, no, that wasn't the guy. It ain't happening today. I understand that, but historically, that was part of the society and the social reality that they lived in. It was a part of the culture. And again, it was almost basically put in the law in which a woman was totally under the authority of a husband in this 16th century. By the end of the 16th century, the family became defined as sacred, an idea earlier reserved only for the church. So now the family is considered sacred by the end of the 16th century. As a result, it was not until the 17th century weddings took on a religious form, where families gathered around the bride and the groom in a religious ceremony. So the 17th century. So yeah, nowadays, it's, people have depending on the religious ceremony, the culture that you believe in, the religion, there's usually some form of a religious ceremony that takes place that unifies the groom and the bride, the groom and the bride and groom, to the position that it is official. The family idea as we know it today still defines families as private spaces where people's emotional needs are met and where women are largely responsible for family well-being. So that is just the opinion that women are largely responsible. Again, going back to the previous slides, it was the blunt of the responsibility to put on for the woman if there's any type of problems. The historical transformation that I produced the family idea based on what historians have labeled the cult of domesticity. The ideology, the system of belief system supporting dominant social institutions, defines women as responsible for the moral and everyday affairs of the home. The ideology defines women as responsible for the moral everyday affairs of the home. Think about that. In reality, large number of women, especially women of color and working class women, according to the author, have always provided labor outside of the home, whether they were slaves or wage laborers. However, the cult of domesticity that emerged from the bourgeoisie women in the 18th and 19th centuries has defined women's roles as one of tending to the affairs of the heart, not the mind. Make sure y'all familiar with that. The emergence, and this was deep right here, the emergence of capitalism. And remember, we're going from an agricultural society to a capitalist society, going into a little bit of Karl Marx and Engels, Engels and Marx, and we get into the fact that with the rise of mercantilism and industrialization, and it became a cash-based economy, eroded the position of women by shifting the center of production from the domestic unit to the public workplace. So therefore, women work was valued in the home. However, the emergence of capitalism now is based upon wages. So therefore, in the agricultural society, we are working on a farm. So therefore, I'm outside doing work. She's inside doing work. Therefore, her work was valued back then. It was valued because of the fact she was doing something for the family. He was doing something, she was doing something, and this emergence of capitalism came up, and industrialization came by, and now they're like, okay, well, you need to be paid for your wages. So now we get paid for our wages, and now it becomes that cash-based economy. No longer agricultural, the shifting of the center of production from the domestic unit went into this public workplace. So now I'm no longer at home. I'm at the factory making money. Cash-based economy. So now that I'm making money, it goes a little bit into what the capitalists thought. And we get into that a little bit later, in which Engels talked about that the change. The men are telling the capitalists, those who own the means of production, the bourgeoisie are telling the men, you making money now. You the breadwinner. You bringing in cash. She's just sitting at home doing nothing. She's not making any money. the bourgeoisie told it to the capitalists, to the workers, and telling the workers that, hey, nah, man, you the breadwinner, you should have more say-so than her. That farming stuff is out the door now. They were convinced that in this separation that they presented, this belief system, it devalued the women's labor in the home, devalued, and made women more economically dependent on men. The shift and the emergence of capitalization. Think about it. What she was doing at home was good, respected, taking care of the home. But capitalism came around. The capitalists, the owners of the factory, paying wages to men and said, nah, man, think about it. Her work is not valuable, it is yours because you are making cash money and she is not. Not good at all. As more goods were produced outside of the home, remember we're talking outside the home, the values of workers became perceived in terms of their earned wages. The social value of women was thus diminished, and household labor, that is the housework, was no longer perceived as actual work. And that is crazy, because the household labor is work. It has always been considered as work, but now it's in this system of a capitalism and a cash-based economy as goods are produced more and more. And you see again, the value of workers became perceived in terms of their earned wages. What your wife is doing at home, man, that's not no real work. You putting in work. Look what you're doing. You're on a factory line producing goods and manufacturing goods. You're making money. She ain't doing it. Convince them in their own home. In their own home. So you go to work and they put this in your head and it becomes the ideology of the social reality that they exist, and they put it in their head and they take it home and diminish the value of what their wife do at work. Feminist scholarships has transformed how we think about families. The structural diversity theory identifies several themes that help explain how families form and operate. And of course, that looked like an exam question, the structural diversity theory. Y'all know I am about my theories. So family forms are socially constructed, and historically they're changing. Family diversity is produced by the same structures that organize society as a whole, that is the intersecting hierarchies of class, race, and gender. Family diversity is constructed through social structure as well by the actions of the family members. So understanding family means challenges monolithic ideas that conceived of the family in idealistic ways. Make sure y'all know this. Often the label of the family connotes a specific family image. So there's an image that is a haven where people can seek refuge from an impersonal, heartless world. Your home is your sanctuary, supposed to be. You go outside that door, it's rough. Y'all think about it. You leave home. You got to deal with all this stuff out there. When you come back home, it's peace. Yet such an image distorts the actual character of life within families. Although families can be a source of love, as the idea of family, care and support, and they can also be sources of trouble, conflict, and sorrow. Unfortunately, that is the case. We can think about it, we can talk about it, we look at the expectations of family members, extended family members, the home household, love, care, and support. That would be great. That's what we want. But sometimes it can turn into trouble, conflict, and sorrow. Likewise, the image of the family is equally fulfilling to all within it can mask the work and inequities that occur within families where despite some changes, women continue to provide the greatest share of family labor. Men can do their part, but some changes, but women has always been the greatest share of family labor. Early on, Jesse Bernard, one of the foremothers of feminist scholarship in sociology, argued that women and men experience families differently. She argued this. Research on families has since shown that not only do women and men experience the family in different ways, but they also hold different expectations for marital roles. Think about that. Some of y'all want to get married one day. What is your expectations for marriage? Women are more likely than men to want egalitarian roles within the marriage. Think about it. The family idea is an ideology that it is a belief system that supports only a specific social construct. The common family idea suggests that all people should conform to certain types of families. Families that are in actuality not all representative of true family life. The common family idea suggests that all people should conform to certain types of families. Families that are in actuality not all representative of true family life. Because of its singular form, the word family implies that there is one dominant form of family life, and it's not. But as you have learned, and we'll see further, that it is not an adequate way to describe the facts of most people's family experience. So our family experience is a little bit different. You ask a bunch of people, how was they raised? How's the family life? There is no dominant one form of family life. This is not how one family is supposed to act. And there is the expectation in society reinforced through the social institutions, and we have been socialized into the culture of what we believe family life should be like. And some people can point, and they put images on television, TV shows and movies which depict what the idea of family life is like, is using that social institution. If you look at the conflict theory, they're saying they are using that social institution to manipulate and to groom and socialize you in order to be like this, the idea of family life. And then it causes conflict within the family when we're not like this according to the structure of what society has reinforced us how to be, and there becomes conflict. You are a husband, you are a wife, you supposed to do this, you supposed to do this. And we're basing not only upon our socialization through our gender roles of our own family, it is being reinforced through the social institutions, even things like the mass media in which we watch on television. And we compare ourselves, and people compare themselves to what family life is like from an ideology of a belief system that this is how we're supposed to behave. Think about it. You watch TV sometime, and this is the idea of family. Some folks make into arguments and say, well, you ain't like such and such on TV. You ain't like such and such. No, that's not the case. But as you have learned, and you will see further, the plural form families is more descriptive of the diverse realities in contemporary U.S. households. Diversity is a key word that best describes contemporary life. We've got a lot of diversity going on. Step families are increasingly common, as are same-sex marriages, including same-sex families with children. In married heterosexual families, the most common form is both the husband and the wife to be employed. The most common form. And we got to get out to step families. Russell Wilson, good job, him and Sierra, being an excellent father, so-called stepfather to, her son. But give it out to guys like Russell Wilson. Female-headed households are increasingly common, including in the middle class, although family-headed households are most likely among low-income and poor families. So I grew up in a single-parent household. Female-headed household is very common. And unfortunately, if we look in our life, I don't think nobody just come out and say, hey, I want to get married, then I want to get divorced, and then I want to be a single parent, and I want to have all this financial responsibilities by myself. A lot of us, especially for young people, it is very difficult predicting what your future is like. For older people, we've been there, done that. We understand what it's like. However, at some point, it becomes a reality that there are some female-headed households. Some people choose not to get married. Some people say, I can do it by myself. And people have done it. My mother is living proof, has done it as a female-headed household, raising 2 boys in the ghetto in the hood. Low-income area. Props out to my mom and other mothers who have done this. So therefore, it is a female-headed household. There is also a level of success that can be achieved. And I don't want nobody, some of my students have been single parents, please don't put your head down, keep your head up. You will graduate from college, you will be successful, and your children will follow your footsteps. It is possible, it can happen, and it will happen. And therefore, don't think that sometimes, and I don't mean to get off track, if you're a female-headed household, there's, whatever your choice may be, but at the same time, your life is still valued, it is still great, and you will be successful. Single people make up an ever-growing segment of the population due at least in part to people marrying later. Some people don't even do it at all. So some of y'all are single people. The Census Bureau defines a household as a living unit containing one or more people. In other words, everyone living in a household unit makes up a household. This person who owns or rents the household is the householder. The Census Bureau that goes on to distinguish family households from non-family households. Family households, this looks like an exam question, it may be, I don't know. But family households are those where at least two members are related by blood, marriage, or adoption. Family. A non-family including those living alone in households where people live together who are not related to householders such as roommates. So I grew up in college, had roommates and stuff like that. We consider each other family, but we wasn't really technically family, but it's like my brother growing up in roommates as far as in college and stuff. Beginning in 2010, the Census Bureau included same-sex spouses as one of the options for people to mark on the census form, which is great. This addition resulted from the activism of a coalition of strong lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender advocacy groups and has produced the ability to estimate the number of same-sex relationships, at least as well as the survey questions that people's self-identity allows, which is a great thing. The 2020 Census Bureau will also allow couples to identify themselves as in the same-sex household. 100 years ago, they might have even done this. 50 years ago, 60 years, they might have even done this. But there is a 2020 was completed. Some highlights of current family change include 2/3 of U.S. households are family households, but only 20% of households are husband and wife households with their own child present. Just those some stats at you. 12% of households are female-headed with no spouse present. Half of these have children present. So again, for the exam purposes, I do not ask statistics questions. Statistics are constantly changing. I don't want you to get caught up on that. As you all do research, the statistics will change. So therefore, I don't test on statistics. 2/3 of U.S. households, sorry, I repeated this slide. Sorry about that. Women are now the sole or primary breadwinner in 42% of U.S. households. They are an additional 22% of co-breadwinners, meaning they contribute 25 to 49% of the total family income. And compared to 1970, 3 times as many children now live with their mothers only. These facts illustrate a number of points, but at the heart of family change are social changes that include the increase in women's labor force participation. Women going out there working. And understand this. Historically, things were where they were and things are where they are now. I encourage my 20-year-old daughter to say, hey, you can do what you want to do. You can have a career. I do not want you to be unhappy where if someone tells you, I just want you to sit at home and not work. You can work, you can choose a career. So therefore, it may not just be for financial reasons that someone's in the labor force, but it is something to occupy their time, something they like to do, and it is their choice to participate in the labor force. And back then, it may not have been a choice, but now we have seen women in great positions, all fields, contributing in leadership, everything, supporting everything. They doing it. Delaying marriage. A lot of women delaying marriage. Tell my daughter, take your time. Don't be rushing to get married now. More child, especially take your time on babies. I tell my daughter, take your time on having babies. They're only 20. More child rearing outside of marriage and changing public attitudes about such matters as same-sex marriage, cohabitation, and gender roles. So there's a change in public opinion. So marriage. Some of y'all gonna get married one day. If you ain't married, you're gonna get married one day. The majority of Americans will marry at some point in their lives. Somebody's gonna want to marry you. It's up to your choice to say yes or no. Somebody's gonna say, let's get married. Or the Jagged Edge song, I just want to get married. Among Western industrial nations, the United States has the highest rate of marriage. 52% of the population over age 15 is married. 32% of the over 15 population has never been married, a huge increase since 1950 when that number was 23%. 10% of the population is divorced, 6% is widowed, although these percentages vary greatly according to the author by race. I don't have figure 6.2, it's in the book, sorry about that. Marriage. I've been married before. Marriage involves a complex set of social dynamics including cooperation. I'm going to say that one more time for y'all to get this. We ain't been married before. You've never been married before. Let me repeat this. Marriage involves a complex set of social dynamics. Cooperation is huge. I'm laughing because I think back when I was younger. You got to cooperate in marriage. It takes a lot of cooperation. Conflict. Avoid that conflict. Please do. Economic ties. Don't be arguing over money. I think don't be arguing over money. Y'all get that together. Have that discussion. And a shared division of labor, a somewhat different picture of marriage than just a romantic bond. There's more than romance in the marriage. There's some work into it. You all can do this. You'll be successful if you won't. Do not let anybody discourage you about getting married. If that's something you want to do, you do it. I just say, in my personal opinion, try your best to be financially stable, because money can break up a marriage. A lack of money can break up a marriage. I've seen it happen with many people I know. Gender plays a significant role in structuring marriage relationships. Studies find that married couples have less conflict, which is a great thing, and more happiness when they hold a strong belief in lifelong marriage and shared decision making. Please share that decision making, and where husbands share a greater proportion of housework. If you all can highlight and underline that, let it be known, especially to the men, as my grandmama would say, menses, to the menses. Got to do some housework. Don't put that all on her. Don't do that, gentlemen. Studies find that married couples have less conflict and more happiness. That's what you want in your relationship, your marriage. Have a strong belief in lifelong marriage. Marriage is considered to be lifelong. It ain't something temporary. Okay, let's do this for a couple of years. If I don't like it, I'm up. No, it's supposed to be lifelong. It is a shared decision making. You don't just make decisions without telling her or telling him. Y'all make the decision together, especially when it comes to money. And well, husbands, you got to do some work, some housework. Pick up that broom. Pick up that mop. If you don't want to wash dishes, get them red paper cups at the dollar store, or that solo red paper cups, and use them. If you don't want to wash the cups, go grab you some of them paper plates if you don't want to wash plates. Gentlemen, we can do this now. Although people do not like to think about marriage in this way, marriage involves power relationships. As partners negotiate, again, partners negotiate, that word negotiate, the day-to-day processes of life. Not every weekend, not once a week, not every month, not every leap year. Every day, negotiate the day-to-day process of how we're going to live. Every day. I'm trying to save you all on some headaches. Day-to-day process, what we're going to do, how we're going to do our life, and make it simple and make it work. And you face major life events. It's inevitable. Birth. You have kids. I've seen people break up over having kids. She go to postpartum, she's pregnant. Relax. Don't act a fool. Don't get mad. Relax. She's going through some things. Imagine you carrying a baby and all this stuff going on, man. This is a lot. Illnesses happen in the family. It is inevitable. Death is inevitable. Try to work it out, discuss it. Marriage can be successful for you all. Do not let it discourage you. People, negativity. It is well demonstrated that the amount of money a person earns establishes that person's relative power within the marriage. Let me read it real quick and talk about it. It is well demonstrated that the amount of money a person earns establishes that person's relative power within the marriage, including the ability to influence decisions, both large and small, and how much independence each partner holds. Uh, I'm not gonna get too deep in it. All I gotta say is that, in my personal opinion, if I make the money, I pay bills, I take care of the house, she run the house. She makes financial decisions. It's okay with me. I'm not gonna sit back and argue with her about some money and power. No. You can. He could. I pay the bills are paid, baby. The bills are paid. I done paid the mortgage. I done paid the light bill, gas bill, cable bill. All that stuff is paid. I'm not gonna try to seek some power. Well, I paid all the bills, so therefore I get to say this. No, you don't. No, you don't. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Whoever paying the most amount of money, if you split it 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, well, however you do it, I don't believe that anybody should seek power over the marriage. You all negotiate, and what works for you, and don't keep everybody outside your business. That idea of family stuff we talked about the slides before, leave that outside somewhere. Don't listen to that. Don't let nobody come in your household and try to tell you how to run your household. Folks will do it, but then you go to their stuff and it's all messed up. You married and they single. They didn't just they married because they single and their spouse is gone and they want to tell you so they can mess up your stuff. Nah, don't do that. When wives earn more, you would expect their power within marriage to increase. To some extent that is true, but research still finds that even when wives earn substantially more than their husbands, couples tend to negotiate marital power within the confines of traditional gender expectations. There are traditional gender expectations. It is your relationships. If your wife earns more money than you, let it be. It's okay. Y'all just work it out. Work it out. Women still do more of the household labor, and men tend to control the couple's finances. This is not all the relationships, it's just some of them. Some people like that. Some people good with money, some not. Some people say, hey, I got a friend of mine, he dates his girlfriend, and she controlling the money. Friend of mine, his wife, she give him a little, he pay all the bills, and she give him a little allowance. Because she said he can't have too much money in his pocket. That's just too much. He can't have too much money in his pocket. She give him allowance, and he okay with that. I think he get like $57 a week. He can't get too much money in his pocket, so she give him a little allowance, and they work for them. I ain't got nothing to say about that. They're grown folks, So women do more of the household labor, of course. A lot of times that's the case. I tell men to cooperate and step up. Men to control the couple's finances. I think it's somehow it depends on relationships. A lot of times I know women control the finances, but it depends on the person's being able to budget and not overspend. As a result, women also have less leisure time than men do. Mothers also tend to combine so-called leisure with the unpaid work that they do caring for their children. Step up and take care of your kids, gentlemen, and give her a break. Gender clearly structures the household work. Women do far more work in the home, which is true. Life events such as the birth of a child, job loss, retirement, and other family commitments such as elder care, caring for a child with special needs, all influence the degree of marital conflict and stability. Keep all that stuff out of there because changes will happen. Life events, life course, the socialization of the life course. We want to avoid marital conflict and stability. Prepare for it and discuss it before you get married. Things can change, people change, I get it. But at the same time, that day-to-day communication, that's why I kept saying that word, communication is huge. It is huge. Communicate. Asking, my mama said, nobody a mind reader. As conditions in society change, the conditions in society, people make adjustments within their relationships, but how well they can cope within the marriage depends on a large area of social, not just individual factors. So you got to adjust to society. What's happening in society changes. Work and communicate as a family. Divorce. I hope none of y'all never get divorced. It's rough. I pray that you all never get divorced, and say that. Not trying to bring church in there. I just hope that you all never get divorced. You would often hear it said that half of all marriages end in divorce, but this is not really true. The divorce rate is now 3.2 for every 1,000 persons in the population, and the marriage rate is 6.9 per 1,000. That's a good thing, making it seem that half of marriages end in divorce, a claim frequently heard. This is a misinterpretation of the statistics. So folks, don't listen to statistics. Your marriage is not a statistic. Now, these divorce and marriage rates count only the marriages and divorces that year, not including other existing marriages. You will also often hear that the average length of marriage is 7 years, but it only counts marriages that end in divorce. In fact, the majority of marriages each year, marriage reach many anniversaries. So, as just one example, of all marriages made in the 1980s, almost 2/3 have reached their 25th year anniversary. That's good. Y'all make them 25 years. That's 2/3 of that's some good stuff right there. So just use that as motivation and talk to these people who've been married for 25 years. Ask them what y'all do to get that long married, 25, 30, 40, 50 years. Ask them what you do, and listen and learn from it. You know, that's a lot of time, but something that's some good 25-year anniversary. I see people like that out there. Congratulations. So therefore, talk to those people. Find out what it did, make it work. Grandma, grandparents, talk to them. Now, the divorce rate has also risen over time, although in recent years it has been declining. Following divorce, both women and men have to redefine relationships with friends and families. Therefore, you don't know who is who, and I hate being involved in. If I know both of the couples, and all of a sudden well, you was my homie before I got married, and now you cool with my wife, and your girlfriend cool with my wife, and now we got to redefine who cool. And when you have family gatherings, please don't invite her, because I got my new girlfriend and my new boyfriend coming. It's some grown folk stuff that can be messy. As the kids say, it can be messy. It comes to terms with a changed identity and it builds a new personal life. Divorced women and men report maintaining individual friendships, especially for them kids. Please just co-parent and don't go back and forth, rehashing what happened. Review my chapter, Intro to Sociology of Marriage and Family. I get a little bit more deep about it. Following divorce, but say they lose friendships with other couples. And that's another story. That's what I was talking about. That's some stuff y'all, other couples, they taking sides, so who messed up the marriage? Y'all marriage. Mothers also tend to carry the major responsibility of parenting following divorce. Women are more likely than men to obtain custody of the children, which is true. 83% of custodial parents are mothers, which has been the case historically. Child support. Obtaining child support is a major problem for women following a divorce. And I talk about this sometimes. I had to pay child support. I paid over maybe $105,000 to $110,000 for my one daughter in child support. I paid it faithfully every month. Resulting not only in the financial hardship, but also in the additional burden of coping with the legal system, including repeated visits to the courts and social service to receive payments. I hope that nobody experienced this, but if you have to endure child support, men or women, but usually it's more times the women get custody of the kids, and so therefore the men, I would say, make your child support payment. I don't care what happened in the relationship and who did what, who cheated, or who did what happened. You have a child. Financially take care of your child. Your child was brought here by you and her, and therefore you have the responsibility of providing financially for your child. Some men I've seen, so I ain't gonna call them men, some dudes, some guys I've seen try to duck and dodge child support by quitting jobs or getting jobs where they get a 1099 and report low income. They running like it's kryptonite. Take care of your kids, man. Just take care of your kids and financially, because it's not her responsibility to financially care for this child by herself. She didn't make this baby by herself. You did it. Take care of your kid and call it a day. Move on. She got a new man. Move on. Future had to get over it. Get over it. She got a new man. And Sierra put it in the song, I'm going to find a man better than you. And she got Russell Wilson, very rich man. And she told him about it in the song, but therefore you still take care of your kids. So therefore don't be mad if your woman, your ex-wife or child's mother upgrade on you and find somebody better than you and say, well, I ain't got to pay. She got a new man. I heard all that silly stuff. So therefore, don't let that, just pay your child support. Mothers who are custodial parents are somewhat less likely to be working full-time than custodial fathers, making them also more dependent on child support and the public assistance. Gentlemen, pay pay child support. Hope you all never get in that situation, but if you know guys, get on them and tell them, you got to take care of your kids. 1/3 of custodial parents live below the poverty line, compared with 17% of custodial fathers. Less than half, 46% of the mothers entitled to child support actually receive the full amount due. That is horrible. And I understand, gentlemen, we go through circumstances financially, but you got to make it happen because that is your baby, that is your child. You have to do it because she or that baby is looking at you as their father, as their daddy. And I love being a father, and I am love being a provider of her as well. So, gentlemen, get on these guys. 40% of fathers on child support also receive less than half the amount due, and also to them ladies as well who paying child support. I know some ladies paying child support, pay that as well. Same thing, go for the ladies now. Despite the problems faced by those who divorce, for many it can be a better option than remaining in a troubled marriage. Although divorce is emotionally stressful, and yes it is, and it's financially risky, many women report it as a positive option, especially if they were unfortunately in an abusive relationship. Abuse is never okay. It is never okay to be abusive in a relationship, man or woman, or if their husbands have left them for other women. Changes in women's roles also mean that women are less financially dependent on husbands than in the past. That is right. Even though most women are financially less well off without the benefit of a man's income, you can still live and you can have a good life. I know a lot of single ladies out here who got their money and they living good, so therefore it's okay. You may not have the money if two incomes come together. However, you happy, work hard, take care of your child, and men take care of your children. Vice versa. The economic interdependence that once bound women and men together in marriage is no longer as binding as it once was. There is a steady growth in the number of cohabitation. That's another thing. Cohabitation, basically people who are living together, single people who are living together outside of marriage. So you're living together, you're not married. Cohabitation, as the old folks call it, they call it shacking up. And Grandma used to say, don't be shacking up, that's a sin. She talked about how bad it was to shack up, but cohabitation has become a fairly standard path towards marriage. Most cohabitators are under 30, but an increasing number of people over 50 are now cohabitating. And I talk to my students, I say, well, how long, and y'all think about that, I say, how long should y'all live together? If you choose to cohabitate, shack up together, how long, and what you're looking for, number one, and number two, how long should you be cohabitating before you decide towards marriage? Because some people are like, I don't want to marry this person. I live with them, I already know. Because one of my friends said, you don't know nobody until you live with them. However, religious views, it may be family reviews, that's up to you. Have and make a strong decision about cohabitation. The likelihood of cohabitation is also related to such factors as your educational standards, your gender status, educational status, gender attitudes, and political orientation, with those most likely to cohabitate being those with favorable attitudes towards gender equality and non-traditional gender roles. Those who hold more conservative religious views are less likely to cohabitate before marriage. Slightly more than half of cohabitating couples, especially those under 30, the young folks, do marry. Some cohabitators live together following the dissolution of other marriages, so there are other children present. The majority of Americans now agree that it is acceptable to raise children when parents live together and are not married, a distinct change from the past. Yes, research has consistently found that premarital cohabitation is related to a greater likelihood of divorce after marriage. This, however, is not likely the result of cohabitation per se much. It is the fact that cohabitators tend to have more permissive attitudes towards sex in marriage than is true for others. Those attitudes are themselves related to the likelihood of marital stability. That is landmark, so we're talking about gay and lesbian families. The landmark Supreme Court case, Obergefell, I can't pronounce it right, versus Hodge in 2015 was a major milestone for same-sex families in that it recognizes same-sex marriages as a constitutional right in every state. The majority of the U.S. public, 64%, also now support the legality of same-sex marriage, a huge change in public opinions. Not even a long period ago, it was a short period of time ago. The decision by the Supreme Court also means that legally married same-sex partners are constitutionally entitled to the same federal benefits as other married people. In other words, the court declared marriage to be a fundamental right of citizenship. Formal recognition of the right to same-sex marriage and changes in public attitudes have made historical change for the LGBT, also Q families as well. That's all I have for today. Enjoy. Hope y'all enjoyed. I've always enjoyed lecturing. I don't mean lecture too much, but you know me, I get the energy flowing and I love lecturing. So therefore, hope you enjoyed it. So therefore, make sure you all do well, review this again, and get prepared for the exam.